All right, on this week's edition of the Penn State Blitz, Bob Flounders is out, Dustin Hockensmith is in. Him and I will talk plenty of Penn State recruiting as the Nittany Lions continue to pick up more class of 2020 commitments, and we'll also have the Penn State mailbag. All right, Dustin, first down. Welcome back to the Penn State Blitz. It's been a while. It's been
quite a long time, yeah.
What, since probably the spring that you joined the Penn State Blitz?
The readers and viewers voted unanimously for me to never come back, but
we had to do it.
But Bob's gone, so I'm here, yeah.
That's right. Well, Bob is enjoying vacation. You and I are enjoying following this Penn State recruiting run because it just seems to be daily that the Lions pick up new commitments. Dustin, this is something I think that we've talked about quite a bit. You've written some stuff about it, but this is new in a lot of ways. The recruiting calendar changed with the official visits that can now take place from April 1st until the last Wednesday before the last Sunday in June, if you can follow that.
You had to look up to summon the information.
Exactly, yeah. Right, yes. And it's changed a lot. Obviously, Penn State's been a benefactor of that in good ways, and then has been, sort of fallen victim to that with some guys as well.
Yeah, so it's the gift that keeps on giving,
right,
in good ways and in bad ways. But I do think that between the way the recruiting calendar shapes up now, a kid's natural inclination to try to make a decision in a lot of cases before their senior seasons begin. And I know if I were halfway talented at all and I had this choice to make, I would like to get it out of the way too. And then I think Penn State is deliberately trying to funnel kids to get to this point. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the June, is a choke point in recruiting. Yeah. So I think what we're seeing now, it might not be as extreme in the 2021 cycle or 2022, but I think it's a tendency that's going to stick around for a while where June is very, very active.
Yeah, I think it might be too. I think a lot of kids, how many kids have we heard? Julian Fleming, obviously the most...
who had enough.
He had enough. Right, yeah. That's exactly where I'm going with this. And we've heard a lot of kids now express that same sort of fatigue of, I'm tired of hearing from 70 coaches a week. I'm tired of having to answer all the messages. I'm tired of, the people tweeting at me and all this, that, and the other thing, trying to plan visits and all that. To me, we've sped up the recruiting process so much that there's no slowing it down. It's just going to get faster. This is yet another example of that. So I would assume this is going to stay like this for a while. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to watch all of your a year and further class commitments because they might not be on solid footing. A kid that commits in October to class of 2021 may decide he wants to take official visits in May. I would expect Penn State and a lot of other schools to start becoming very selective and very direct and clear with their message, Dustin, about how they're going to handle these situations moving forward. We're not going to take your commitment in October, and then when you say you want to go visit in April because, hey, everybody else is doing it, it's not going to be okay like maybe it was in the past.
Yeah, and I think we saw this with the decommitments. All four were from out of state. Derek Wingo's a good example of getting an
Ruined Christmas
for Greg. He will never forgive you for that, ever. I did it once. He still holds it against me. So getting a commitment early from a kid from the state of Florida and trying to prevent the pull from his home state. We saw that, Justin Fields is another one a couple years ago. That is a hard thing to do. And then obviously Grant Toutant from Michigan went to Ohio State, and the two kids from National Christian Prep who decommitted late as well. So I think getting early commitments is a double-edged sword.
Right.
You're going to set up. Everybody else is going to be really busy this time of year too, and then the expectation that you get a commitment and a kid's not going to visit someplace else is not very realistic in a lot of cases.
Right. All right. Let's move on to second down. We're not going to use any numbers of how many guys Penn State has committed because just like last week, we taped this. Literally walk off the set, and Tyler Elston had committed to Penn State, putting all of the stuff we just said numbers-wise as completely irrelevant. So let's just say simply it's been a very good run for James Franklin and his staff since the start of June, but specifically since June 21st, they've picked up almost 10 commits in that time. Dustin, which is the guy on offense that excites you most of that group that started, back on June 1st?
Well, Jaden Dotton, the 4-star wide receiver from Connecticut, is an exciting player. You watch him on film, and you don't see a guy who is polished to the max right now. You see a guy who is a man amongst boys in that competitive field in Connecticut. But you see all the tools. He's 6'3", about 170 pounds. It's easy to see him being 200 pounds and moving very well. You don't see a kid who requires very precise route running right now.
Right.
But how many wide receiver prospects coming out of high school are in any way near complete products when
Right.
they get to college. So he'll require a little bit of development, a little bit of time in the weight room and things like that. But I think he's going to be a really good player.
Yeah, I do too. I thought that was a big get for Penn State because he was starting, at least in my opinion, to become another Northeast kid that looks like Penn State's the clear leader all the way, and then all of a sudden he goes somewhere else. Christian Wilkins is always the poster boy for that, but there's just some other kids from up in the Connecticut, New England, states that have been guys that look like dead leans for Penn State, and then all of a sudden it turns on its head. So to lock him up, get his commitment secured was good. For me, it's Olu Fashanu, the offensive lineman from the D.C. area. I think that, he's a guy who, when you talk about trying to build the future of your line through recruiting and not do the junior college ranks, you need guys like him to come in and really set the stage. His frame looks fantastic. He looks like he's, advanced from a technique standpoint and so on. I mean, he's not a guy I think that can come in and play you right away, but I do think he has some of the Rasheed Walker tendencies of being a guy who maybe as a redshirt freshman can find his way into the starting lineup. Dropped to a 3rd star in the 2% Sports Composite. I'm not sure what happened there, but he's a guy that's really exciting.
6'5", 320 doesn't grow on trees,
Right.
and I think you can make the case that Penn State really needs bodies at offensive tackle.
All right, 3rd down, we're going to flip the conversation to defense. Many expect Penn State's 2019 unit, led by Brent Pry, to be one of the best in the country, just shaping up to be a pretty darn solid recruiting class that will sign and play in the class of 2020 with some of these guys that are going to be on the field for Penn State this fall. Dustin, the defensive guy in this June run that impresses you the most is who?
Well, we talked about this too. Amin Manover, one of the newest commits, a 3-star. Neither of us can really understand why he's a 3-star and not a 4-star. I do suspect that will change by the time the cycle's over.
Maybe by the time we're done recording, who knows?
If we're saying it now, there's a good chance that the universe is going to screw us in some way.
Right.
But he's 6'4", 260 pounds. That is a hard frame to find too. He's got very, very long arms. He offers the flexibility to play inside or outside. I think he's got a shot to play either position and do it well. That length could be a matchup problem inside, but I think he can hold the line at defensive end if that's where he stays. That's where he is doing most of his playing now. So he offers a lot of flexibility, and the fact that he's got offers from Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia should say everything you need to know about what kind of kid they're getting,
Right.
and where I think in this case the recruiting services are missing something here.
Yeah, for sure. I think you'll see his profile continue to rise, especially during a senior season. I'm going to go with Keziah Izzard, another defensive lineman, a kid that Penn State's been recruiting for a long time, and quite frankly, a kid that if you're Penn State, you have to land him. Very talented defensive lineman in the Mid-Atlantic, plays in Maryland, and looks like a guy who is probably going to grow into a defensive tackle at the next level. But, we've seen this with Sean Spencer. The way they want to recruit defensive linemen is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. Yes, they'll take some surefire tackles like P.J. Mustipher, but they're going to take guys they think are athletic, big, and strong, and they could have some growing left to do still. And if they grow into defensive tackles, wonderful. If they stay at defensive ends, just fine, because they have the speed to play there. So Izzard falls into pretty much the perfect fit for what Sean Spencer looks for. Vanover does as well. I think Penn State's done a really nice job on the defensive line in this class.
And not all these transition points, they like cornerback to safety to linebacker.
Right.
This is the most tried and true transition as a defensive end inside the defensive tackle.
Yeah, it can be frustrating, I think, for a lot of fans, especially when the safety to linebacker to safety, corner to safety. You're hoping a lot of things are going to go right. Defensive end to defensive tackle, not quite as big of a jump. All right, let's go on to 4th down. It's mailbag time. Let's start with the win total. The win totals were released at a pair of Vegas sports books recently. Penn State listed at 8.5. One book has it lined in such a way that it favors Penn State going over that total. One book has it in such a way that it favors Penn State going under that total. So bettors in Las Vegas are going to be able to get whichever side of the coin they think Penn State falls on. Which side of the coin are you at right now?
Now, to clarify, that's just regular season.
That's
not
correct, yes.
factoring in the bowl game.
Right.
I have a winning 9 games. I don't think anybody on the planet can right now say that they're good enough to beat Michigan or Ohio State.
Right.
So if you're going to chalk those up as losses, the 2 other games on the schedule that you're looking at, assuming that Penn State is somewhere close to how good we think they can be, are Michigan State and Iowa on the road. I think Iowa has been plucky. That's to their credit, but they haven't been able to get over the top.
Right.
Michigan State, on the other hand, Mark D'Antonio has some kind of Jedi mind hold on James Franklin
Right.
that it's hard to forecast a win in East Lansing against Michigan State. So I guess I would say a loss to Michigan State, a win on the road to Iowa. That's their most challenging core games, and the assumption is that they take care of business in every game that they're favored, which is probably going to be the rest of them.
Right, yeah. At this point, that would also mean beating Michigan, of course, at home. It would mean going to Maryland in that Big Ten opener and winning on a Friday night. I know that they're going to be, probably 10-point favorites, but it's the Super Bowl for Maryland. There's just no doubt about that. So this challenging schedule this year, I mean, I am pretty much dead on right in the middle with you. I'm either 8-4 or 9-3, obviously. That's why the total's 8.5, because you have to decide which way you want to go. To me, I think Penn State's good enough to go win at Iowa. I agree with you. Michigan State, talent-wise, Penn State's going to have as much, if not better, talent than Michigan State will when they take the field in East Lansing later this year.
That's been true the last 2 years.
Right.
Now, what's the best-case scenario? The best-case scenario is, I think, beating Michigan at home falls under the best-case scenario.
Yep.
If Sean Clifford is the real deal, that changes a lot of things. We just don't know that yet because the defense has a chance to be a dominant unit. And it can atone for if Penn State's offense has some hiccups or struggles. They can win with defense. And so I think that that's something that brings a lot of scenarios into play.
Best case scenario, you beat Iowa, you beat Michigan State, you beat Michigan, you lose at Ohio State. So you have one loss. To me, that's the best case. Is that more or less likely than Penn State losing to Iowa and Michigan State on the road, losing to Michigan at home, and losing Ohio State?
I think they're both equally likely.
And that's the thing. I think you can easily see a 10-win season, and you could also easily see an 8-win season. I'm going to go over the total. I've written a couple of times now. I think 9-3 is where this team lands. They're going to have some things go their way. They're going to have to do some things that will be considered first in the James Franklin era, but it's certainly a possibility.
Yes, sir.
All right, one more question before we get out of here, Dustin. Penn State obviously is experiencing success like we talked about during the recruiting dead period. When you look ahead to the rest of the summer here, do you think there'll be a month that tops, the rest of the year here, do you think there's a month that tops this one on the recruiting trail? And it doesn't have to be numbers, because you could easily make the argument that landing, let's say, 3 5-stars would be better than landing 8 3-stars. And even though one's going to do a lot more for you in terms of future depth, but the other one's going to do a lot for you in terms of the buzz and everything else. So, in your opinion, is this probably the best month Penn State's going to have? Was the best month Penn State's going to have on the recruiting trail this year?
I think December could be better.
Okay. It depends.
It has a chance.
Yeah.
I think recruiting comes down to a lot more than winning and losing games. There's a lot of factors involved. Chemistry with the recruiting class, chemistry with the coaches, chemistry with the existing players, academics, social environment, facilities, like all this stuff rolls into it. So wins and losses don't always make or break things, but Penn State has some questions to answer.
Right.
And I think if they come out and answer those questions in a solid way, they're going to be right there in the mix with a bunch of 4-star kids. And maybe that push to December, that early signing period, ends up being pretty strong. I like what they did in the month of June, but I don't know how many surefire impact guys they got among all those signees. There were a few for sure, but I think impact guys could be more the signature of December than June. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. If Penn State does the best case scenario we just talked about, you're probably talking about an enormous December for James Franklin's program. If you're talking about, a little bit lesser than the best case scenario, maybe not as much. So, all right, that's the Penn State Blitz. Dustin, thanks for sitting in. We'll have to find a new pinch hitter next week, but we will be back then to talk more Penn State football.